Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, to my Starbucks, and we are ready to start talking about books. It's pretty gray and rainy today, which I feel is like the perfect book weather to talk about books, at least. So my book reading has kind of been a little all over the place this past month, mainly because I was reading the Outlands Pentalogy, the series, but I kept on reading books in between. And I also was reading a non-fiction book at the same time. So my reading was kind of a little all over the place this month, but I think it worked out in the end. I also waited a little bit to be able to do this video because I wanted to finish the Outlands Pentalogy to be able to kind of like wrap it up in this video. And in the time in between when I finished that book and when I finally got around to filming this video, I've actually read another book. So we got lots of books to talk about today. So first we're going to talk about the Outlands Pentalogy. So I've already talked about A Touch of Death and A History of Madness in my previous book video. I'll link it up for you guys, and yes, this cover is different than the rest of the series. So then this month I've finished the rest. So we have A Promise of Return, A Dance of Lies, and A Time of Prophecy. The quick and dirty summary is basically it is a dystopian, adult dystopian series, and it is about three people mainly. Nate and Tom are brothers, and then the other character is Kitty, and Kitty is like assigned to be the partner of Tom. And basically they are like the children of the like upper class elite of this dystopian society until one day Nate and Kitty get infected with this like disease that turns them into like half-blood mutants, because in this dystopian world there is like two human races, so get inflicted of the blood of this other mutant human race, and basically then the series ensues. So I'll quickly kind of just touch over my thoughts of the last three books, and I'll give you my thoughts of the series overall. So the third book, A Promise of Return, this is from Tom's perspective, and this is my favorite book in the series. I think Tom is, I kind of flip-flop who's my favorite character, but he's definitely up there, especially in this book. I just really liked reading his perspective. I really liked what happened in this book. The action was really good. The writing was really good. I liked all of the characters and everything, and yeah, I just thought it was really good. Then it kind of like took a step down after that. The fourth book is probably my least favorite in the series. It goes back to Kitty's perspective, and it's not because of Kitty that I didn't like the book. I found this was a very character driven book, which if you guys don't know, there's like kind of like character driven versus plot driven. So plot driven, if there's like a lot of like action and like events that happen, versus character driven is more, it's about like the characters and their development. So I don't like character driven books as much as action driven books. It's good to have a balance. I found this one was very character driven. It was like a lot just about the characters and them developing, and you know, trying to process a lot of the trauma that's happened to them. So I didn't like this one as much. And then the final book is A Time of Prophecy, and this is better than the fourth book, but still not my favorite. I found the first half of the novel was very character driven, and the latter half of the novel was more like action based, which kind of makes sense because it's the end of the series, so they're like wrapping stuff up. I did find that at times it also started to get a little bit repetitive within near the end of the series, that kind of like the same things were being rehashed like over and over again. There's kind of like this like love triangle that keeps on getting like played out over and over again. There's issues with Nate and Kitty's relationship that they keep on going over and over again, so it got a little bit repetitive. Also in this book there's a lot of like side characters from like the past novels that like, kind of come back again, and so it's a little confusing to like keep track of all the side characters. But I will say that the ending was really good, really satisfying. So my thoughts on the series overall. First, if you didn't know, this is actually a self-published book series. Rebecca sent the first book to me, but I purchased the rest of the books myself, and I definitely, not only that, but this is also a dystopian series, so I had kind of like low expectations going into the series. One, because like I said, it's self-published, and I've only read one other self-published book and it wasn't the greatest. And then also because it's dystopian, I think that books like Hunger Games and Divergent kind of like really shaped the genre in like the early 2010s, and kind of like there was like a lot of books that came out after trying to be like that and trying to like market on the popularity, which kind of like brought the standards down for the genre. So I was kind of like a little worried going into it, but I will say that it exceeded my expectations on both fronts. I thought this was a really good dystopian series, and I also thought it was just like a good series overall. I think if you like dystopian novels and you enjoy the series, if you don't like dystopian novels, I don't think you'll necessarily enjoy it. Like, I don't know, I feel like dystopia and sci-fi is one of those genres where it's like, if you like this, like if you don't like the genre, you're not gonna like the books. This is definitely a mature. I would say this is kind of like in the new adult category, where the characters are like, the youngest is 16 at one point and the oldest is like 25. They also like grow throughout the series, like from the first book to the last book spans like 5 years as well. There's definitely like a lot of like mature subject matter in this books. There's a lot of like drinking and smoking. There's a lot of like bad language, lots of very serious topics, and I think that's something that's really great about the series, that I think Rebecca did really well, is handle those serious topics of things like rape, sexual assault, violence, trauma. But I will say it's not necessarily graphic in those depictions, except for maybe like violence. Like there's like a lot of like killing that happens, but the rest isn't very graphic. Also, another thing I really like about the series as well is that it has great diversity in it, different races. Well, not only is there like great diversity in the characters, but there's also like the discussion of like another human race and the issues of like having another human race, and that there's like a lot of would you say xenophobia for another human race? I'm not sure what the technical word would be, but there's a lot of like prejudice against other human race. There's also another really great thing too, is that like Tom is bisexual, and it's a very accepting view of it. In the society, you are like assigned, they call it a complement, but you're basically assigned a partner, and because the population is like shrinking, you have to produce children. So there's this very like heterosexual, the state is like placing heterosexuality on all of the population, but like within the population it's just like very like open. Like a lot of times like people have lovers who are of the same sex, so it's kind of just like a very like open and welcoming view on all of it. So I think it does a lot of things really well. Overall, I give this series, if I'm going to be annoying, I'm gonna give it 4.24 stars because the first 3 books I gave 4 out of 5 stars, 4.5 out of 5 stars, and then the later 2 I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So if you want to like cut the difference, it's like 4.25. Yeah, I think that they're really good. I think there were some issues like along the way of things that I would change, and I think like it's not perfect, but it's still a really good series, and I would recommend. Because it's self-published, you really get to support the author when you get this series. So in the middle of the series, I read a book that was lent to me, and so that's why I read it in the middle of the series. I don't have the book anymore because we gave it back. It is The Last Mrs. Parrish. I'll put the photo up here. My mom and her friend like to like share books. Basically, they share books, and if the book is good, then my mom will give it to me and tell me to read. And you know, my mom so far has been pretty good with her recommendations, so I kind of just take it. The Last Mrs. Parrish. So the gist of this novel, this is an adult thriller, and it is about Amber, who tries to insert herself into the lives of the Parrishes, Daphne being the wife and Jackson being the husband, and they are like uber rich, like millionaire, billionaire almost type of rich. They're very rich, so she's trying to like insert herself into the lives of these people. The writing of this book is amazing. Like, I definitely would consider reading other books by Liv Constantine, which by the way, they're a sister duo under that penmanship name. Yeah, their writing was just so good. It flowed so easily. This is definitely a book that I could easily like binge. It's a bingeable book. You could easily read it in like an afternoon or something like that, or like over a weekend. The writing is just like really addictive, and you just want to keep on reading. So the first half of the novel is from Amber's perspective. Well, I guess more like thirds. So first third is from Amber's perspective, second third is from Daphne's, and then the last third is kind of like back and forth between the two. And Amber is not really the most likable character. Like, she's definitely pretty despicable, but I still rooted for her, and I think that's a really good show with making a good character, because it's easy to make a character that you just absolutely hate, but like I didn't like her, but like I still like rooted for her. They created a really good complex character. There is a big twist that happens in the middle of the book and kind of just changes the whole entire tempo of the book. I will say that it got a little slow kind of like right near the end of Amber's part, right near the beginning of Daphne's section, until that twist happened. So that was kind of like a, okay, I could have maybe improved the writing of that a bit, but then it made the twists all the more better. I wouldn't call this necessarily the most stereotypical thriller. When I think of a thriller, generally there's like something really bad that happens, either a murder or a missing person or like an assault or something like that. Generally something really negative. Like, there's no murder or anything like that in the book. So I would almost call it like there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of like tension and some suspense. When you think of thriller, there's no murder, so there's none of that in this book. I would almost call it more of like a drama more than a thriller. But I mean, like it's still pretty messed up. Like, bad things happen, just no one dies. Thought the ending was pretty good, satisfying, like people got what was coming to them and all that stuff. And yeah, overall I would say it's a good book, and I would definitely read more by Liv Constantine. I would recommend it, but I would just keep in mind that if you like thrillers, this is not going to be like your classic thriller. And I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. Up next we have my nonfiction book. This is Emotion Revealed. I technically started this in March and I finished it at the end of April. Took me a while to get through it. I really struggle with nonfiction novels. I don't read a lot of them, and there are very few that I would rank really high on my list, and this one wasn't a winner. So this book is called Emotions Revealed: Recognizing Faces and Feelings to Improve Communication and Emotional Life. So when I read that subtitle, I think, oh, this is going to be a lot about communication and emotional life. And this was a gift, by the way. My mom got this for me because, you know, I studied communication, and she was like, oh, communication, this will be a great book for you to read. And while it does talk a bit about that, that is only part of this novel. It's actually more of a psychology book. It talks a lot more, like it says here, it talks a lot about like the triggers of emotions and how you can control them. So yeah, basically it kind of underwhelmed me. The focus of what I thought this book was going to be, I thought it was going to be a lot more on like nonverbal communication, and in reality it's more about the psychology of emotions. I still learned a lot of stuff. It's actually quite interesting because one of his big things is that emotions are universal. So there's 6 big emotions, and that they're universal, that like the faces that people make for all of them are like same around the world. So that was kind of interesting. The way that the book was written, it was very formulaic in the middle chapters. This is emotion, this is the triggers, this is this, da, 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 da. Like I kind of just like listed things out. So it was kind of like, it lacked the novelty of like, I knew what was kind of coming in a sense. And then something I also noticed this in a lot of nonfiction books is that like they lack that like narrative push to keep me reading through a book. And like obviously it's nonfiction, but like some nonfictions can still have a good narrative to keep you going through the book, and this just lacked it. So it almost became a chore to read this book, which is not what you want. Then also the language is quite academic. I find that he had a habit of like referencing the works of other people, which is like totally fine if you like do a good job of explaining it. Like you don't even need to necessarily do it, and kind of just like state what is needed and then put like a reference type of thing, but like he didn't do it. So anyways, but yeah, it's very like academic in tone in a lot of it. Like it's not like super academic, it's not like reading a journal, like it's not as bad as that, but it's like closer to that than like normal speak. Anyways, I don't think it's necessarily the most accessible and approachable book for the average person. This book is 20 years old now. Oh, it's upside down. This book is also 20 almost 20 years old, or is 20 years old. So obviously it's becoming a little outdated in certain sections and could use a bit of an update. What I will find really interesting though is that one of the big things that he says for controlling emotions is meditation, which is really interesting because like meditation is something that is like huge right now. Like you have all these meditation apps and everyone's talking about how like mindfulness and meditation is the best things for mental health, and he was recommending that 20 years ago. So at the time, that's like it's pretty impressive that he talks about that, and it kind of makes me like want to retry meditation. I could like go on a tangent about me and meditation, but I won't. I'll save it for another time. But yes, so in summary, I don't think this is an awful book. I just don't think it was the best. I think it could have been written better so it was more accessible. Like if you're into psychology and all that stuff, you'll absolutely love this book. You'll like groove with it. But I think it didn't do a good job of making the subject interesting for people who weren't interested in it, if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Long story short, I give this 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't bad, but it could have been so much better. This next book I technically read in May because I'm filming this on the 5th, and I read this all in May. But I mean, I finished the book. I might as well talk about it and put it in this video, even though this is my April books. This is You, and this is not the book that the Netflix show is about. Like I know that the Netflix TV show You is based off of the book. This is it. This is completely different. So this was really interesting about this book, and the reason why I bought it, which by the way, I bought this when I was a teenager, so many years ago. So the reason why I bought it is because this is written in the second perspective. So you have first person, second person, third person perspective. So first is I, third is he, and second is you. So the book is written so that way it says like the first sentence is, you're surprised at all the blood, right? That's kind of how it goes. You're just a kid, it can't be your fault, but then there's all the blood, blah blah blah. So do you get what I'm saying? Like it's in the second perspective. There is this alluding to this accident that happens as well. Kind of a little bit of like a mystery of like, what is this accident with all this blood? And it's written from the second perspective. So quite interesting premise, but it's awful. The book was executed so poorly. So I want to put it out there that like the main character is a 15-year-old boy, and I realize as a mid-20s woman that, you know, our perspectives are a little different. So I realized that I'm not the target audience for this book, but like I can still appreciate a book even if I'm not the target audience, but it's just so poorly done that I'm just like, no one should read this. The second person perspective, I think, has so much potential, but I think it would have been best if the main character was ambiguous. That way it would allow the reader to be able to step into the person's shoes more. But the main character is named Kyle Chase. Like, you know so much about him that it's not ambiguous. So even though it's you, it's not me, because I'm not Kyle. We are very different people. The novelty of like the second perspective kind of like went away really quickly because we're such different people. So like I just didn't feel like it was an effective way of using that writing tool. I just felt like it was a really cool concept, but it wasn't used well. It could have been used so much better. And speaking of Kyle, the main character, I absolutely hate him. Like, he is so unlikable. He's very arrogant. He is very conceited. He constantly talks about how he thinks that he's so much better, so much smarter than all of his peers, than his teachers. But then at the same time, you're like, but you're the one who's not trying. Like, he's one of those like kind of like burnouts, like one of those guys who he's like, it could do well in school and he could be really smart if he applied himself, but he doesn't, and he doesn't care about all this stuff. He gives me almost like incel vibes, like almost. He has a lot of like anger issues as well. Like, he's just not likable. There's just so many things about this him where I'm just like, well, like, if you just get your shit together, your life will be so much better. Like, I really dislike this character, so it makes it hard to like the book when you absolutely hate the main character. I can get past it, like for example in The Lost Mrs. Parrish, where like Elise Amber had like drive and ambition, and I was like, okay, yeah, you go girl, even though it was a little misplaced. Him, I just absolutely hated. Then on top of that, nothing happens the majority of the novel. It is alluded throughout the whole entire novel, like here and there little sprinkles of this accent that's going to happen, but like everything that happens leading up to it is so boring. Like, it's about him like not doing well in school, him not listening to his parents yelling at him trying to flirt with this girl and it going nowhere because he's too much of a loser to just ask her out, him hanging out with friends that he doesn't like it's literally just so boring. And then like there is this antagonist, Sack, who's trying to like stir the pot and adds like a little bit of spice, but like I totally do not get the motivations of this antagonist. It is explained, but it just doesn't make any sense, like realistically. It just pisses me off because I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. The whole entire climax of the novel, one, it's way too short. It happens within like maybe like 20 pages right at the end of the book, and it's very unclear what actually happens. Like, I'll spoil it a little bit for you guys because I don't think you should read it, but basically he breaks this trophy case and there's glass everywhere and there's blood everywhere, and I'm just like, I don't get it. It says he has like a big cut all the way up his arm, and I'm like, is he dying? Is he okay? It says that like there's blood on Zach because he got cut. I'm like, is he dying? Is he gonna die? Who's dead? Are people dying? Are people not dying? Like, it's so unclear, and it just like ends, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what happened? There's no satisfaction at the ending. And also, leading up to this point, there's this really obvious section that is like Kyle learning his lesson, like how he could have made all of these different choices if life would have been different. And like, that's clearly like, this is something annoying about like YA fiction, is that sometimes it's really clear that the author has like a lesson it wants to teach the readers, and they're way too blatantly obvious about it. Like, it just turns me off of it. So the lesson was way too clear. There was no subtlety whatsoever. So that is a very long rant for me to say that I really didn't like this book. I finished the book last night, guys, okay? So I kind of have that like anger still bubbling inside of me. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars because it had potential. The second person perspective, quite an interesting tool. It could have been a very good book, but the execution was just awful, and I don't recommend this to anyone. Don't read it. Just don't read it. It's not worth it. And on that note, we'll go into my TBR. We have another one from my mom. This wasn't on my TBR. I post TBRs on TikTok before I film this video. Like, I post them like on May 1st. Oops, this isn't on it, but anyways. My mom's friend lent my mom The Wives. My mom finished this. She read it in like 2 days, and she was like, the ending is very good. Read it. So I was like, okay. So this is The Wives by Taryn Fisher. I think that's how you say the name. So this is an adult thriller. This is about a woman whose husband has 2 other wives that she knows of, but she doesn't know that, like, it's not like Sister Wives where like they know each other and stuff like that. It's like a secret. Like, she knows that her husband has other wives, but she's never met these other wives. So then she finds out the name of this other wife, Hannah, oh by the way, and then she forms like a secret relationship with this wife, with the Hannah not knowing that they're married to the same person. And it's all going well until Hannah shows signs that her husband is abusing her, except for the fact that like they have the same husband. So now the like person who, like I said, they just say, hey, you. So I don't even know who the person is, the main character is. But anyways, so this girl finds out that her husband is abusing his other wife. So she's like, he's never been violent with me. Like, what's going on? And now you're like confused about your husband, and also you're curious as to who the other wife is. I don't know if I'm explaining this well. It's a little confusing, but I'm curious to see where it goes. If I made books video, maybe I can describe this book a little better. Okay, after that, I want to get through this book quickly because I really want to read this bad boy. So this is The Crown of Gilded Bones by Jennifer L. Armentrout. By Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the third book in the Blood and Ash series. I'm not sure I talked about this on YouTube, but I definitely have a blog post about them. This is a very popular series on Book Talk. Yes, and this was a very anticipated release. I was actually very happy because in the US you were able to pre-order this book, and in Canada we weren't, and then it wasn't up on Amazon for a couple of days. So I was like, oh my god, am I gonna have to wait a really long time to get this? But I did get lucky and I took a couple days, but I was able to finally order it off of Amazon. This is a thick boy, by the way. It's like, yeah, it's like 645 pages. It's a very long book. But anyways, if you don't know what From Blood and Ash is about, it is a new adult fantasy series. The series is about Poppy, who was this like maiden. She was this young woman who was chosen, and she was going to be like sacrificed for her country, but like obviously other stuff ensues, and there are vampires and werewolves, but it's not your like classic vampire and werewolf type of thing. This is a very anticipated release. I'm very excited to read it. I've really been avoiding spoilers, so I don't know much. I have seen that there's kind of been mixed reaction, that some people love it, but there's also been a couple of people who have been disappointed with this one compared to the last two. I don't know why, because like I said, I've been avoiding spoilers, but I am excited to read it. And then next, if you didn't know, I like to try and alternate in between newer books and older books. So that's why we had, you know, my series, and then I read You, which was an older book that I'm planning on reading. This is a new book. Now for my old book, we have Shine by Lauren Miracle. I never know how to pronounce names, guys, okay? Names are not my thing. Anyways, she's really famous for her TTYL series, which was that series in text speak. I never read that series, but I know that she was really famous for that. But this book is worlds different. So this is a YA mystery novel, and it follows a girl named Kat. She is searching for who committed a hate crime against her childhood best friend. He's gay, and someone like beat him up and left him for dead basically. So Kat is trying to find out who did it. Then they live in a small southern rural community. This book deals with a lot of like really heavy subjects such as poverty, clannishness. That's what it says. I don't know what that means exactly, but drugs, intolerance, homophobia. Kat has been assaulted, and it mentions it in the synopsis. This is definitely going to be a little bit of a dark book. I got a lot of like thrillers and dark stuff recently. I randomly just picked these books, by the way. I have like my section, my TBR section, and it basically like random number generator and then counts, and that's how I pick my old books. My new books I go based on like what I feel like reading, but yeah. Anyways, so this is Shine, and then if I have the chance, because this is a really big book, so it might take me a little bit of time to get through it, but if I manage to get through those 3 books, the last one I want to read is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is by V. Schwab, and I got this book for my birthday from my friends. Thank you very much, friends. So the synopsis of this is also a very popular book on Book Talk. A lot of people really like it. They say it's kind of one of those books that you have to read once in your life. So this is about a girl named Addie LaRue, and she basically makes a deal with the devil to live forever, but no one remembers who she is. So she made this deal in the 18th century, and she has lived hundreds of years without anyone remembering who she is after first meeting them. So like she'll meet and like can talk to someone and like have a conversation, but as soon as she leaves, then they forget about her. So she lives hundreds of years like that until one day someone does remember her, and then the story goes from there. So yeah, this is an adult fantasy, I believe is what they call it. Yes, this is an adult fantasy book, also historical fiction elements as well. I'm very excited to read it, so hopefully I can get to it this month. Hey guys, that is it for today's book video. Very long, I know. My reading was kind of all over the place, but hopefully next month it's kind of a little straightforward. With all of my book videos, please let me know down below if you've read any of these books, and if you have, what are your thoughts? And also let me know if you have any book recommendations for me. I'm always adding to my TBR, so please let me know what you think I would like based on, you know, what I've said so far. And like this video if you want to see more book content. Also want to see more book content, I post on TikTok on the daily, all about books. TikTok, it's all about the books for me. And yeah, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any videos. That is it for today's video, and I'll see you in another one super soon.